first speaker, I'd like to introduce Katrina Troughton, who is the Managing Director of IBM, Australia and New Zealand, a role she was appointed to in July 2019. And prior to this, she held regional and global leadership roles in IBM across IBM's cloud, software and infrastructure businesses, and was based in Shanghai and New York. It was her time leading as IBM's Smarter Workforce Solutions portfolio globally that cemented Katrina's passion for skills development and transforming organisational culture and purpose-driven leadership, a passion for lifelong learning, talent development and diversity and inclusion. Katrina leads IBM's Inclusion Council that's focused on progressing initiatives across Australia and New Zealand. She also serves as executive sponsor of IBM's LGBTQ Business Resource Group, and she received the CEO of the Year Award at the 2021 Australian LGBTQ Inclusion Awards for her personal impact championing LGBTQ inclusion initiatives. Welcome, Katrina.
Well, good morning. And I've got to say, Corinne, that despite being 18 months into these various lockdowns and working virtually, I still so wish I could actually see you all here today rather than streaking to my screen with the risk of interruption at any point from one of my three boys who I really hope are studying right now. Look, today I'm coming to you from Sydney's North Shore, and I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of this land, the Camaragal people of the Eora Nation. Pay my respects to the elders of this region, their past, present and emerging. And to those joining from New Zealand, kia ora, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Corinne, I'd like to congratulate you and the Human Synergistics team for your 50 years. I mean, that's an amazing milestone for any business in this day and age. And I'd really like to thank you for the opportunity to tell our cultural journey and the one that we've been on here at IBM for the last 3 years across Australia and New Zealand. It's been a really amazing ride. So I'll start at the beginning and set the scene. As I'm sure many of you are aware, IBM is one of the best known companies and brands globally. We specialize in technology and business transformation, and we've remained at the forefront of an incredibly competitive, fast changing industry for more than 100 years. In fact, we just had our 110th birthday. And our technology solutions are integral to the operation of so many organisations across Australia and New Zealand. Banks, retailers, airlines, government agencies, like the ATO, if you recently put in a tax return, Services Australia, Medicare, I think we're all pretty familiar with that at the moment as well here in Australia, and other organisations across Australia and New Zealand. So you probably interact with us more than you realise. But, you know, despite having that recognised brand, world-leading technology and a marketplace which is growing, our employee engagement and customer satisfaction scores were really low. In fact, we ranked among our 28 markets in IBM, or 175 countries that we operate in around the world, the lowest for employee engagement and customer net promoter score, or NPS, customer satisfaction. So we really knew we had a problem. And after a process of elimination, we realized that it actually came down to our culture. It came down to our attitude, the behaviors we were displaying, the way we were showing up with our clients. We weren't showing up as a team who could win or even wanted to win. So there was a real sense that maybe some of you who also work in large multinationals might relate to. At times there was a sense that it really didn't matter what we did, because someone over in global head office, they called the shots. So the challenge we were really working on is, how can we possibly change that culture? So that's never easy, but we really started by asking those who knew our culture best, our people. You know, we asked our people what they thought we needed to change. We didn't mandate things from the top. We really wanted our people to have a big say in the process and to help us with the answers. The other thing we did, which is a bit unusual for IBM, is we went outside our building and appointed Human Synergistics to help guide our cultural transformation. They were great decisions, and they've really continued to pay dividends. So where were we back at the beginning in 2018 when we started working with Human Synergistics? Well, here's our circumplex from that time. Now, look at all that green and red, and Corinne just took you through some of that a minute ago. You know, it's really confronting to learn your organisation has an aggressive defensive culture. For those of you who aren't familiar with the model, it really showed that our people felt that our primary style as an organisation was you had to be a winner. You had to be seen to be noticed. You had to outperform your peers. That's all that red competitive power oppositional traits. Our diagram also showed a lot of green or avoidance. Our people felt we tended to push decisions upwards. We shifted responsibility to others. We avoided risk, and we did not want to be blamed if things went wrong. And then, worst of all, probably, we were barely there on the things we wanted to be known for, like celebrating achievement, empowering our people, being human and encouraging, and being affiliative. So all of this in a business that delivers innovation, and a business where you should have permission to fail and try something if you try something new and you want to be pushing boundaries. So what did we do about it? Well, as I said, the first thing we did was we asked our people what they thought we should do. We ran a series of vision sprints to crowdsource the culture that our people, IBMers as we're known, wanted to see. We asked our leadership team to facilitate those vision sprints so that IBMers could see our commitment to listening and to making change. What came back was people just didn't want to fix what we had. They actually wanted a new IBM. It kind of became a tagline for us. They also thought we should focus on 3 areas: leadership, systems and processes, and the idea of one IBM, that we were truly working together as a team. So in practice, this related and really translated for us into 3 kind of key areas of activity. The first was to work on our why, our purpose. What was our mission? What were the priorities? If our employees understand our purpose, which is to be essential, and believe in it and feel that what they do matters and makes a difference, then engagement looks after itself. Now, funnily enough, this has actually become probably even more straightforward during COVID. Our people have truly been able to see the importance of the work they do every day. We were able to switch and operate seamlessly working from home globally. We enabled our clients to work from home. Our technology ensures hospitals run, vaccines are delivered. And if you have your vaccine certificate now in Australia, it's due to the work we've done and the support we have of the Australian Immunisation Register and all the underlying systems that support it. You know, we enabled citizens to receive support payments, and there was phenomenal work from the government to make the changes through ATO and Services Australia to enable that to happen. And we enabled essential workers to travel. All things that meant people could see their purpose and how much difference they made in what they did every day. Crystal clear what we do and why it matters. The second area of our focus is to work on systems and processes. I think this is one of those never-ending areas, but we rolled out and focused on a lot of programs, including changing the way we recruit, improving our training and enablement, ensuring that we were coaching and supporting people rather than blaming and punishing, putting a really big focus on diversity and inclusion, particularly inclusion, and increasing our inter-unit cooperation by making sure that people were clearer about roles and responsibilities. Then the third area of activity, and probably the biggest push and the driver of most change, was around leadership. It's involved an enormous investment of time and extensive communication. And it started with ensuring that our leaders themselves understood the importance of the cultural journey and the outcomes we're seeking to achieve. We wanted constructive leaders who would be role models and role model the values we wanted to see. We started with the facilitation of the vision sprints, as I mentioned earlier, and we included the leadership team and focused on the way we presented ourselves collectively to IBMers. I know it kind of sounds crazy, but in a large organization, you have to keep repeating to all stakeholders, yes, we're doing this. Yes, it's important. Yes, we're really committed to supporting cultural change. And we felt like we repeated that many, many times. We also adopted Human Synergistics Lifestyles Inventory, or the LSI tool, to make leaders more aware of their own styles and gather 360-degree feedback from their team. We appointed internal culture and leadership champions and coaches to engage more of our people in the change, and it really enabled us to scale the program. We held quarterly all-staff meetings to inform everyone how we were going and to build confidence in the program and a sense of momentum. And finally, with any big milestone of change, we asked where culture mattered every time we had something going on and how we could leverage it as an opportunity to make sure culture was at the fore. So an example, we consolidated our offices in Sydney to have everyone working out of 2 major sites in St Leonard's and in the city. And as we did that, we took the chance to again run some of those crowdsourcing workshops, but to ask people how they wanted to work in their new office areas. Results were kind of fascinating because different teams with different business outcomes and different ways of working came together, but worked on the right outcome for them. So sales teams who are regularly in and out of the office could have some very different ways of working than teams like our digital team who are always together in the office. Each of them defined the way they're going to work together. They kind of defined their microculture, which enabled them to work best. So we have offices where sometimes people work, yes, even now, we occasionally have people working in offices, but on different floors with different ways of working. And I think a really important framework for us to be able to use. We can't wait to get back into some of those spaces post-lockdown, but even now in hybrid working modes across the country, we're seeing that payoff and those discussions continue. So just moving forward to, a few of the results. So here's the circumplex from our cultural remeasure in late 2020. Now, before I show you this, I just want you to keep in mind that late 2020, we were 7 or 8 months into the COVID-19 pandemic. If that was not disruptive enough, IBM had just announced a massive restructure, arguably one of the biggest we've ever had. Here and around the world, we're spinning off a very large part of our business into a new services-focused company known as Kyndryl. It probably would have been understandable to delay the remeasure until this restructure had more clarity, but we went out and talked to our culture champions. I asked them what they thought, and they said, we made a commitment to IBMers that we'd remeasure in 2 years, and it's really important we do it. And so we went back, did our remeasure late 2020, and here's how we looked after 2 years of concerted effort working on our culture. So look at all that blue and, much smaller green, much smaller red, a really great result that was borne out in our other key metrics as well. Our internal engagement score rose by more than 18.5 points out of 100 from 2018 to 2020. And we drove some really significant improvements in our inclusion. In fact, our local measures are now best in class globally for IBM, which I'm really proud of. Our staff advocacy rose 25.2 points between 2018 and 2020. So that's the likelihood an employee would recommend IBM as a great place to work to their friends and family. And of course, almost most importantly, our customers were happier too. They said we were showing up differently, and it's been reflected in our NPS. That moved by more than 20 points. So our customers went from being slight detractors to active promoters. I think you can all appreciate how much difference that makes. These are huge changes. And in fact, we understand that IBM's in the top 10% of Human Synergistics large clients in terms of the amount of change we achieved in that 2-year period. The most important point to me, though, is that remeasure exceeded the 2-year remeasure goal the teams themselves set back in 2018. As I said, these results were really achieved while many of our team members were grappling with COVID, concerned about our structural changes and everything else going on. And I think that points to something of an unexpected benefit from the cultural change work. I really believe it's made our organisation more resilient. Having a stronger culture has proven to be an important source of stability when a lot of other things have been in flux. I suppose a bit like a keel on a yacht. Focusing on our culture and how we relate to each other has created new bonds between our people, and it's given many people a new sense of pride in being an IBMer. I think it's given us a common language we can better articulate our workplace experience and navigate change from. And to put another way, I just cannot imagine how we'd be going today if our people felt as negative, disempowered, disconnected, and unheard as they did in 2018. Now, things are not perfect, but I'm really confident we have a more collaborative, constructive, inclusive, and encouraging culture. And as we continue to work on our culture in line with the program in response to the pandemic, we really look for more opportunities to develop it. For instance, I still have really regular meetings with our 500 top senior managers via video conference. Those meetings started as a way of staying in touch during COVID, but they've become an important formal and informal forum that we couldn't have imagined holding before. And perhaps the biggest reward of all, I think, is hearing people talk differently about our business and simply being happy to show up every day. So I thought I might close and just summarize a few lessons we've taken away from our change process, and what ones that we'll continue to hang on to in the years ahead, because culture is never just set and forget. The first is to take a really realistic look at your situation. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Do you need to change? The second, listen to your people. Really listen. Your culture comes from your people, and if they feel involved and empowered, that's key. Third, decide where you're going to channel your efforts. We focused on our mission and purpose, systems and processes, and leadership, but you might have different levers. Fourth, really focus on how you bring everyone along on the journey. For us, that's meaning continuing to talk about culture at multiple levels, actively updating our teams on how we're going. For example, in April, we had a major session to convey the results I'm sharing with you with all of our team to maintain that momentum. Since then, we also announced a new set of awards and recognition and some ways that we can recognise and our teams can recognise colleagues who demonstrate some of the behaviours that we've seen make such a difference and represent the culture that we want to continue to build. So this investment in our culture has had a really positive impact on the way we've transitioned to new ways of working when COVID began as well. And I know it's also going to underpin the continued evolution and improvement as we think through the post-COVID, if there's ever going to be such a thing, but the new working environment that we're all faced with. So let me just finally, though, say a really, really big thank you to everyone at IBM, including my predecessor, David LaRose, who some of you may have heard speaking at this forum 2 years ago at the start of our journey. All IBMers have truly gotten behind our change program and continue to take it forward every day. In fact, it really is your transformation. In fact, our journey's really come full circle with corporate HQ noticing what we've done here in Australia and New Zealand and incorporating some of those lessons into IBM's global culture focus. So we're really proud of that. And then finally to Human Synergistics, really, really big thank you for your terrific support. It's been appreciated, and Corinne, your personal engagement's been amazing. So I think we have a few minutes left, and Corinne, be happy to answer a few questions.
I was going to do that at least once today, I think, is leave myself on mute. But thank you so much, Katrina. And we have some questions coming through. One of the questions that I've been asked repeatedly, and what I love about the IBM story, and thank you for coming and sharing it, is the continuity. And so some of the questions we've had from people coming up is, to what extent do you think COVID helped or hindered? Did it help? Did it get in the way of the culture work? Sometimes our clients aren't quite sure whether they should wait or whether they should, continue with the work that they're doing on culture. What's your view?
Look, I think it helped us, and there's a number of fronts on it. I mean, first of all, our communications changed. We we did a lot more open, flat communication. In fact, I started running calls we called Ask Me Anything calls, where I think the first few we had at the beginning of COVID, we had thousands, 3,000, 4,000 people join just to ask questions, just to hear what's going on. And I think that flattening and, of course, engaging other parts of my leadership team and various people in gave people a real sense that, when we talked about empowering, when we talked about wanting and supporting culture and listening, that we were really serious about that. Mm-hmm. I think the environment of that we also really focused on a lot around, ensuring our people were okay. And we have essential workers who continued to be on the front line. And we had people, of course, who've now worked from home for the better part of 18 months. So, really the full range. And I think that the focus around the programs of welfare, mental health, being able to have those discussions more openly has radically changed. And I think it's just continued to increase the bonds that exist across people. And I think most of all, and as I commented, the language that people had to talk about what they were experiencing being common, and people feeling that it was okay to call out and do that has helped us continue to navigate. I saw many of our clients and our team almost go into a crisis mode for a period where people were working, it felt like 24/7 just to keep things going and make sure systems were up and available and running. And you've got to recover from that. You've got to get back into but what's sustainable? And so I think all of those pieces, being able to have people feel able to call out and go, okay, I need to adjust, and have a language to do that in, really, really helped. So I think there's a lot of areas we could point to that, the COVID just accelerated and assisted us in our journey.
Sounds like that there was a real drumbeat, there was a real constant flow of communication in all different ways. We've got a question from Kate Mannix, who was interested in whether you're able to sort of provide a bit more detail on some of the recognition initiatives that IBM is introducing.
Yeah, look, I think we've always had a lot of recognition, and when we reflected on it and heard what our team had to say, we're really good at recognising, top sales performance. We're really good at recognising those amazing hero events where, we had engineers over COVID who literally made sure and sat working with clients to make sure systems kept going, and they're phenomenal. Really proud of these incredible efforts. What the team reflected, though, was we weren't always good at recognising the people who consistently display the kind of behaviours we want to see. They encourage and support rather than being the one at the front, or they coach other team members well beyond the realms of their sort of day-to-day job. And so we opened up a couple of new awards, one around people being able to nominate managers who displayed that and continued to create the environment that they wanted to see. We also enabled more peer-to-peer recognition. So we've increased and now have available, a system that enables you to recognise people and just thank them for what they've done, as well as be able to then go through to an award that we have, which we're going to do every quarter, for the person in the business that's helped the most and demonstrated those kind of characteristics that we've been looking for. So there's a couple of examples, and we ran those for the first time last quarter, and it was just really interesting to see how much dialogue was created around it. And we use Slack, but in our comms channels around just recognising, peers as well as some of the leadership.
Brilliant. I love that idea of peer-to-peer recognition that often gets missed, and it seems like such a great opportunity for people to appreciate each other's work and support that. We've got a couple of questions about leadership that I'm going to combine from Scott, Buchanan and Mark. And one is, can you talk a little bit about how did IBM sort of move leadership mindset, and how do you work with leaders who maybe are a bit more reluctant to walk the talk?
Look, I think, wouldn't it be nice if there was a sort of just do these three things and you'll get there? But I think we've learned that the first part of it is, being consistent on it. So we have for, consistently talked about what we want and look for in leadership as I think an important tenet of that, so that it's, you hear it from every angle and consistently. I think the second part that's really key is the tools that we enabled managers with. So we actually, provided them and worked with human synergistics around the LSI index. The interesting thing to me was I've had so many managers say to me, that was a change event for me. I felt like I was really invested in, that you cared about, making sure that I really had the tools I needed, but it was hard. I learned something. And then the third part is when people, when you've got to a point that you understand there's some things you do well, there's some things you don't do well. I certainly have things I keep working on all the time and wish you could just get right all the time, but you don't. And so it's about what are the tools around learning and support structures that you put around enabling people to make that change. And then the opportunity to recognize that change when you see it in people. But back to, we do have, we're really revamped. I talked about one of the processes a lot around our learning, around this consistent, lifelong learning, adding skills. And as part of that, a lot of those are skills around things like coaching, around support. So things that support managers making that change that we're looking for as well, where it's needed. So I think, consistency, some kind of view that they understand where they're good, where they're not, what they've got to work on, and then the support to actually, continue to develop those skills and see the feedback from it. Probably the three things we've been doing.
I just wanted to build and share with the audience something that you and I were talking about, because there are things that that IBM did which not everybody does. And you said to me, Corinne, you should sort of talk about that because you didn't realize it. But one of the things that IBM did to support leaders is actually to accredit, I think, sort of 20, that we ended up having maybe actually 30, so 26 people in the business become accredited in LSI, and they became leadership coaches.
Yeah.
What was fantastic about that is, of course, it included people from people and culture team, because they're such a vital internal coaching resource, but it also included some of IBM's top talent in terms of business leaders. And I think that was an amazing investment in getting business leaders to coach other business leaders, to encourage and see that it was possible to get results in a different way.
Oh, look, and I think actually that's a really good reflection, Corinne, because probably should have said, when I say skills and learning, that coaching piece of it was really important. But also, this isn't something you can leave to a team. This has to be something that the business own. And I think the appointment of those coaches, the people who got trained as coaches, really just embedded that into the business, and it becomes part of the accountability you have as a business leader. One of the things that I think IBM's got an amazing heritage of doing well is around diversity and inclusion. And as a business leader growing, I've always had a target around that. I've always had my diversity plan and the expectation that that's me that has to own that outcome, not not someone in HR or someone else. They're there to help and coach and support, but as an owner, you lead it. And I think that's absolutely how culture has to be.
We've got lots of questions, and I'm conscious that we're running out of time. So to those of you who have asked questions and we've not been able to ask Katrina all of them, what we'll do is make a commitment to answering those questions and working with Katrina to respond to those questions, and then we'll post it at a later day. One of the questions that's come through pretty regularly is there anything that you would have done differently?
I've always been a person who's sort of look forward rather than look back. So I was I've asked myself that question a few times, but one is actually I probably would have pushed some of it a bit harder. I mean, I've been, if anything, surprised at how much people have just absorbed and wanted to make this change. And so I think the one question I've said is, well, does that mean we could have done even more? I think the answer probably is. On the other hand, I don't think, I started this role, as you said, in our Q3 in 2019 and sort of walked into bushfires and COVID. And I'm not sure we could all cope with that much more. But I do think, that idea of daring to dream big and it being part of your journey, I think I probably would have, embraced that even more. The second thing, I think, had I understood when we hit COVID that it was going to continue this long, I think I would have really thought and worked more with some of our champions and coaches about what more we could do to empower them through this time. Because it's been a hard journey for a lot of people. And there might have been more we could have been doing through that to support it. But otherwise, look, I'm just really, really proud of what the team's achieved. And I meant what I said at the end, that I think it is the team who, and IBMers who said, this matters to us and I want to go do it. And I'm making a difference in what I do and I can do even more. So it really was about, the team and how well they embraced it. And massive learning for me watching that process.
Brilliant. And thank you so much. It's, some fantastic insights there around making sure that you understand where you are, be consistent, be available, have a number of supports for managers. And it's an amazing achievement to move so far in such a small amount of time. Congratulations, Katrina, to you and all the IBMers who've made it possible. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you all. I hope to see you all again soon too.